Alright, so the 2K primer is on most of the car. I haven't done the door jambs or doors or the hood and boot, the underside of them, but most of it's on. That abomination on the trunk lid is where I thought it would be a brilliant idea to spray foam the voids in this to give it a little more rigidity, which it did. However, right there, I should have drilled a couple more holes. The excess foam couldn't escape. This foam that you see right here actually escaped last week, even though I sprayed foamed this 2 months ago or so. It was still wet in there, and the trunk bubbled up right here pretty majorly. So my immediate thought was I'm just going to have to get a new lid, but then I thought, well, I'm going to beat it down and see what happens. And at the end of the day, it's still all goofed up. I can feel it, and I have filler there, which this represents more filler than that is on the entire car, and this is only like not even an eighth of an inch thick, but there's like less than a cup of filler on this whole car, so I'm not going to ruin it here at the very end. I'm just going to spend $150 for a new trunk lid and call it a day. So today I'm going to prep the doors, which I've already started. I've got a couple areas, it's hard to see in the sun, but a couple areas that needed a little bit of repair. And the doors have that sort of peened texture to it that I seriously considered filling, but at the end of the day I'm just going to leave it, and whatever's smooth is smooth, whatever's textured is textured, and that's just how it's going to be. But the doors will be the same exterior color as the car, which is a red. So right now I'm going to work on prepping the jambs, prepping the doors, the dash, everything else that has to get the 2K primer I'll work on now. And then after I spray that primer, I can block the whole car yet again for the 100th time, and but this time with, sorry for my pinky there, this time with 320 and then 400, and then I will spray a sealer on it and move on into the color. The motor, I took the intake off because I'm building fuel rails for it, which you've seen in another video. It's a dusty mess in here now. This was perfectly clean and finished, but you can see the valve covers. That's the same color as the car. I painted those, and motor wise it's generally stock. Couple things that I've had to do is, or not had to do, some of the things I wanted to do. I sent my intake off to a guy in Missouri who ported it for me. That's where you can see all this smooth stuff, and it continues on down in there. My upper intake, which isn't on here now, I had mirror polished, which amazes the crap out of me that they can take a sandcast piece and turn it into a mirror, but it's awesome. I won't have catalytic converters. I've got shorty headers on there. It's hard to see, but they're JBA headers. They're a ceramic coated stainless steel header. I've done a workaround for the coolant oil heat exchanger, that beast of a adapter or whatever you want to call it. Just there's no room for it, and it's an emissions thing I don't really need. All this is the when you switch over to this sort of coolant system, you have to deal with the fact that the original system was set up for a coolant bypass line, which bypasses the thermostat. So there's coolant always flowing through the motor, even when it's cold. And once it heats up, it bypasses, the bypass turns off and it runs through the radiator. But this setup is more traditional. My thermostat is in here. This line under here goes back to what used to be a freeze plug right there in the back of the driver's side head. I removed the freeze plug and put a fitting in there. These engines were sort of notorious for the fact that cylinders 7 and 8 would sometimes burn up because it was a dead end for the coolant. So that would be a really hot spot on the motor. So this eliminates that problem. Now the whole coolant circulation system includes that part of the head. And these other two lines are just, the lines that feed coolant to or from the engine. I can't remember which way it flows. I think that's it for right now. Oh, there's my Hydro Boost system. I'm not sure what that came out of, but it fits pretty neatly in there. And I had to make a special sort of wedge plate behind it because the firewall is at a different angle than the car it came off of. But in order to get the reservoir level, I did that, so it's mounted in there really well and should work perfectly. Hydro Boost takes the power steering fluid and it uses that for brake boost instead of vacuum. So I tie it into the lines that come from the power steering pump. This is my oil filter. Has to be a remote oil filter, so I've got an adapter under there that there's no way we can see. And don't give me a hard time about these CPVC fittings. They're not there for real. They were there for a mock-up that I was trying to figure out how to do my lines. So that'll all be aluminum AN fittings and hose similar to this braided hose here. So I'm going to get to work on sanding. This is my hood, which is now ready to be primed with the 2K primer. The top side of the hood is already finished. What I wanted to show is I did 2 or 3 things to this hood. One, I filled all these ribs generally with spray foam to do a couple things, to give the hood a little more density and also to connect the outer skin of the hood to this, the structure, the stamped part of the hood, because I wanted to seal up these gaps. And I originally sealed it with a seam sealer that dries hard, and it was awful. It left a tiny little gap still at the bottom of this metal and the top of the seam sealer. So I've come back and cleaned that up, and now it's sealed with a flexible seam sealer that's really nice. It stays nice and soft. Should do the job. Also, when I filled this with foam, I drilled a couple extra holes to get the foam in and also to help relieve pressure. I didn't really think the pressure would be that big of a deal, but as it turns out, as you can see from my trunk lid, which is right there, perfectly good trunk lid, the original one from the car, and when I filled it in, the rib that's under that part, which is right here, it took like a month for it to happen because there was foam, liquid foam that got encapsulated by other foam that dried. So it just very, very slowly and relentlessly expanded. But eventually it expanded a bump right here when I was blocking the car. The final blocking is when it really popped up. It didn't even show up the first time I blocked the car. So I thought I would try to fix it, and I ended up with like a little over 1/16 of an inch of Bondo in there, which I'm totally opposed to. There's more Bondo right here than on the entire rest of the car. So I just didn't want at the very end of the project for there to be a big chunk of Bondo. So I bought a new trunk lid. It's coming today. When it gets here, it'll be epoxy primed. I'll sand it and prep it for the 2K primer, and hopefully prime it, this weekend. The other thing I did is I cut these 2 pieces of sheet metal. I made a little cardboard template and got it right, and then I cut these 2 and glued them in. They just sort of seal off the 2 kind of final big holes. There's other holes in here that I just left, but I think this will make for a nice clean look under the hood. Not that anybody's going to care except me, but still I think it'll look good. So my next move is I'm about to clean out. I pushed the car out of the paint booth, which is where we are right now, and I'm about to clean all the excess stuff out of the paint booth, and then I'm going to spray the 2K primer on. These are my doors. So the outside of the doors are already primed, and now the tops and bottoms and sides of the doors are all sanded and ready. So I'm going to prime all of this, and then on the other side of the paint booth are my fenders. You know, fenders come with epoxy primer on them. The inside of the fender isn't really supposed to go unpainted. So I sanded all that, and I'm going to prime it with the 2K primer, and then it'll get a black paint under it. And the outside of the fender, like everything else, is already primed with 2K, so it's ready to go. After I get all these inner panels primed, I'll block everything with 320 and then 400, and then paint everything I'm going to prime today. So the underside of the hood, the underside of the boot lid, the doors, the back side of the fenders, get all that stuff painted, and paint the door jambs and trunk jamb and dash, you know, everything in the car that gets the finished color. And then, except for the main body panels, then I'll assemble all this back together and paint all the body panels. So that's the plan for today. Paint booth is generally cleaned up, car's out of the way, and these panels are all prepped. So this is the hood. You know, the other side's already primed. Two doors are set up here. The two little splash guards that mount to the back of the headlight buckets are right there. They come from the factory on the fender that way. So I pulled them apart to paint it. Behind the hood, I'm not sure if you can see it, are the two fenders, and everything's ready to go. So everything's been cleaned, like I blew out everything, wiped everything down, vacuumed off all these parts again, wiped them all down. I used denatured alcohol on a rag, and should be good to go. This is what the paint booth sounds like when it's on. I don't know if you can see everything just puffed up, but it's pretty good pressure. I pressurized the paint booth, and then I have filters at the front of the paint booth for the exhaust air. Just can show you here. So, filter's a little dirty from when I primed the the overall bulk of the car, but they're still good. I'll replace them again when I paint the start putting color on the car. So that's all for now. So I use the Apollo spray system. This is a 5-stage turbine HVLP spray system. It provides its own air. Don't have to worry about drying it or filtering it or anything. Comes with this atomizer, and so far for everything I've painted, it works absolutely flawlessly. I'm using a 1.8 tip with the Eastwood 2K primer. So I'm going to crank up the fan, and all you'll hear is fan noise, but you'll see what's going on.